To be honest, we were caught by surprise. To be honest, we were caught by surprise. To be honest, we were caught by surprise.
Madam Speaker, the Cabinet has affirmed and approved the following for salaries of the National Political Directorate effective April 1st, 2022. The Leader of the Opposition at the same level as the Deputy Prime Minister, 20.1 million as at April 1st, 2022, 22.7 million as at April 1st, 2023, and 25.7 million as at April 1st, 2024. For the Prime Minister, Madam Speaker, salary of 22.3 million as at April 1st, 2022, 25.3 million at April 1st, 2023, and salary of 28.6 million as at April 1st, 2024. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Madam Speaker, the opposition takes no issue with what the minister has announced. We would urge the government to deal with the anomalies that exist for civil servants who have been granted increases and where there are discrepancies in their salaries, to urgently address those anomalies so that everyone can benefit from the new compensation package. But we take no issue.
So, Madam Speaker, I will take the member's contribution as a statement of support for these reforms by the opposition, which I am grateful for. With respect to the point on addressing anomalies, Madam Speaker, this House and the country at large can rest assured that the Ministry of Finance and Public Service and the Transformation Implementation Unit are working overtime to address any anomalies that arise. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank the member for his contribution. And with that, Madam Speaker, if that's the only question, I thank you for the opportunity to make the statement.
To be honest, we were caught by surprise, and I think that the response that Minister Julian Robinson gave was taken out of context. When he said he didn't have any issues with it, he was talking about the methodology, which had been the long-standing practice as to how permanent secretary salaries provide the yardstick for ministers. That was his view.
That the cabinet minister is paid at $52 higher than the maximum of the permanent secretary salary scale, which has been the framework for the past 37 years.
But if you look at most of what he said after that initial statement, it was bemoaning and criticizing the government for not adhering to the principle of equity, where we were giving these enormous increases to the political representatives, whereas the rank and file across the public service were very unhappy because their take-home pay the increase was trivial in many instances.
For some categories of workers, they have even realized more than 100% increase in their tailoring allowance as a result of the signing of this agreement just last night.
Just by way of example, the salary scale for previously designated LMO TS6 officers who are ancillary supervisors and skilled artisans, i.e. certified and experienced mechanics and plumbers and electricians who work in maintenance departments in the public service, those salaries have moved from, the scale has moved from $13,700 to $15,500 a week, effective April 1st, 2021, to $47,656 to $64,000 per week, effective April 1st, 2023, an increase of 247% to 313% in the salary scale over this period. This corresponding salary scale over the same period for the LMO TS5 was between 200% and 360%. For the LMO TS4 between 178 and 230%. For the LMO TS3 between 80% and 120%. For the LMO TS2 from 60% to 100%. At the starting level of the previous LMO scale, the salary scales for the LMO TS1, who are our groundsmen and watchmen and entry-level ancillary workers in the public service, has moved from $9,781 to $11,000 a week to $16,400 to $22,000 per week as at April 1st, 2023, and that salary scale movement reflects 68% to 100%. Madam Speaker, there are approximately 6,000 Jamaicans in the categories of previously designated LMO TS1 to TS6 officers. The anomaly to the individual is it's as if the world is coming down because it's their particular experience. We can't afford to look at it from the point of view of 100,000. For that individual, that is all that matters in the world. And as a result, Madam Speaker, we take each and every one of the cases brought before us absolutely seriously. We would just want there to be an understanding that we have taken on the entire public service at one time. And there's no precedent that we have been able to find of a country that has done that. We have chosen to do it, Madam Speaker, because of the realities in our country. That if we had started the reform with one group and then proposed to do another group in a couple of years and another group in a couple of years, Madam Speaker, it would not be credible because we have tried that in the past. In the past, we started with one group that brought them to 80% of market. And all know the other groups were not adjusted. Which is why, Madam Speaker, this was the only way for Jamaica to do it, to take on the entire thing at once. But the corollary of it, Madam Speaker, is that in taking on the entire thing at once, while for 80% or more of persons, I would say, a higher number, maybe even 90%, things are working, there are no doubt anomalies that we have to address, and we give our commitment to do so.
So our position was an undeveloped position at that time. We were responding off the cuff to something we were hearing for the first time. As the days unfolded, more information was forthcoming as to the comparative situation among other countries in our region, for example, and as to give us that time to reflect on what had actually been proposed, or not proposed, announced by the Minister of Finance on Tuesday. So I accept that our position has evolved somewhat, but I think it's understandable because we were responding to something that we were hearing for the first time on Tuesday, and it has taken us some time to think through these issues. But the position has been arrived at from not today, over the weekend I spoke to it, and on Monday again, that this thing can't work.
For the public to be aware, these salaries have been up on the Ministry of Finance website for the past 6 weeks. Madam Speaker, if you want to understand the administrative challenges in the public service, you put in a new compensation system and you push it through. The Ministry of Finance is responsible for the pay policy and for reaching agreement with public sector unions and for providing the resources for the salaries to be paid. But salaries in the public service, Madam Speaker, the administration is very fragmented. They're implemented at a local level, and each ministry, department, and agency is responsible for their own implementation. For example, it is Parliament that will implement the new salaries for members of the executive and the legislature, not the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service. Similarly, each ministry and department and agency implements their segment of it, not the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service. For the vast majority of the public service, we have had that implementation go through without issue. You'll recall in December we had some issues in the health sector, but those delays were 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. As such, Madam Speaker, there has been significant adjustment to the salary scales for the leadership across the public sector. And bear with me while I just give a few examples. And I've brought some of the salary scales to share. In the police force, the salary scale for the Deputy Commissioner, before you consider other things, has moved from 9 million to 10.8 million to 14 million to 17 million, effective April 1, 2023. The salary scale for the superintendent was 5.6 million to 6.7 million. And for 2023, that's now 9.5 million to 11.6 million. For the deputy superintendent, who used to be at 3.3 million to 4 million, that's now at 6.2 million to 7.5 million. For the legal profession in the public service, Madam Speaker, the legal officer 6 has moved from 4.9 to 5.9 million, if you can just bear those numbers, as at April 2021, to 10.1 to 13.6 million. 4.9 to 5.9 to 10.1 to 13.6. The legal officer 5 has moved from 4.1 to 4.8 to 10.1 to 13.6 million. In the nursing profession, the salary scale in the leadership, Madam Speaker, has moved from 3.5 to 4.2, which is what it was in 2021. 3.5 million to 4.2 million to 9.25 million to 10.995 million as at April 2023, Madam Speaker. For the second layer in the nursing profession, not just the leadership, it was 3 million to 3.6, and it's now moved to 8.25 million to 9.8 million as at April 2023. For medical doctors, and here I talk about not the consultants who earn much more than the other doctors. They used to be called junior doctors, we just call them doctors today. The salaries before this reform at the highest level of the medical doctor profession, the salaries, were 3 million to 3.6 million in 2021, and we have moved those now to 8.2 million to 9.8 million. The salary scale for medical doctors at the MO2 level were 2.6 million to 3.1 million, and they have moved to 7.3 million to 8.7 million. The salary scale at the MO1 level was 2.2 million to 2.7 million. That's moved to 6.3 to 7.5 million. Just to continue, Madam Speaker, the salary scale.
We need an efficient compensation system that aligns compensation with effort and responsibility. Nevertheless, it is important that the country is assured that its leader symbolically and truthfully understands their concerns. As your leader, I do. Therefore, I have directed the Transformation Implementation Unit to remove the Prime Minister's compensation from the new salary scale. The Prime Minister's compensation will therefore remain at its previous levels. To be clear, no retroactive payments will apply to the Prime Minister's pay. I firmly believe that when this new compensation scheme is completed and all anomalies are resolved, coupled with the new performance management and accountability system, which will be implemented, we will see an increase in the motivation and productivity of the public sector, including that of ministers, councillors, and MPs. Jamaica has a unique opportunity at this time to truly set the stage to attract greater talents and skills into the political domain and demand performance from us to earn your confidence. We should not let this opportunity pass only to be confronted by it in the near future. I ask for your understanding and support.
Because I'm still upon this 200% salary increase. Did you all know that Mark Jefferson Golding is the highest paid politician in Jamaica? Yes, man. He is receiving a salary of $25.7 million per year. Yes, man. Mark Golding still and is the only highest paid politician in the history of Jamaica.
The leader of the opposition at the same level as the Deputy Prime Minister, 20.1 million as at April 1st, 2022, 22.7 million as at April 1st, 2023, and 25.7 million as at April 1st, 2024.
The opposition is of the view that the increases in the salaries of elected officials should be suspended until the outstanding grievances affecting public sector workers are satisfactorily addressed. I did not come into politics to enrich myself, but to serve the people of Jamaica. As leader of the opposition, I must lead by example at a time like this. I will therefore redirect the bulk of the 240+% increase in my pay and retain 20% of that increase and contribute the rest to persons in need and other worthy causes. I intend to do this until the outstanding grouses affecting the public sector workers arising out of the restructuring have been satisfactorily addressed.
For some categories of workers, they have even realized more than 100% increase in their tailoring allowance as a result of the signing of this agreement just last night. So it is indeed a win for Jamaica on a whole, if it is indeed a win for the workers, because I believe the minister and his team were quite diligent in terms of their attention to the matter. He was there from the beginning, the start of this exercise, and we thought it was important that he kept his hand on the steering wheel, so to speak, and see through, which he had promised to do, and we are very happy that we were able to accomplish that task.
Mm-hmm. I am mindful that the leader of the opposition is the only parliamentarian on our side whose package is in the senior executive leadership category. And our other parliamentarians continue to have discussions among themselves as to how best to deal with their situation.
Isn't it true, though, that Julian Robinson is one of the party spokespersons who usually explains himself and his position extremely well? He's articulate.
Absolutely.
He's
however,
clear.
Absolutely. However,
no, but that's
he
not
was
a however.
taken by surprise. No, don't underestimate that point, though, that you're in the parliament and these figures are presented to you, and this is the first you're hearing them.
For the public to be aware, these salaries are up, have been up on the Ministry of Finance website for the past 6 weeks.
And Robinson is not an inexperienced parliamentarian.
No, he's not.
Right. He handles things on the fly all the time. He responds to government announcements all the time. Yeah. The opposition takes no issue is a very specific, very positive statement, which the finance minister went on to say that he's taking as a show of support for the government, and there was no pushback from anybody. Isn't it reasonable for us to believe that what Mr. Robinson said is what he meant, especially since he has not said a word? You're the one out here spinning.
No, I'm not spinning at all. I'm trying to add context to what is being said.
Madam Speaker, the opposition takes no issue with what the minister has announced. We would urge the government to deal with the anomalies that exist for civil servants who have been granted increases and where there are discrepancies in their salaries, to urgently address those anomalies so that everyone can benefit from the new compensation package. But we take no issue.
So, Madam Speaker, I will take the member's contribution as a statement of support for these reforms by the opposition, which I am grateful for.
And I keep emphasizing the point that the party was not consulted in the process, therefore he did not know. What he heard would have been that these are in line with what a permanent secretary would get. So that process, that methodology, he wouldn't take any issue with the methodology.
You don't think this explanation insults our intelligence, Dr.
No,
Campbell?
it doesn't. No, it doesn't. What I'm saying to you, I'm in Parliament. I'm sitting down. The minister says these salaries are pegged to the salaries of the permanent secretaries. The person gets up to say, well, we don't take any issues with that.
For the public to be aware, these salaries are up, have been up on the Ministry of Finance website for the past 6 weeks.
Goes on to say that we want you to address the anomalies. The party has completed that sentence, or completed that point, by going further to say, in light of these increases, we think that if you are going to give the political directorate this huge increase, then if you're only going to give a smaller increase to the majority of the persons in the public sector, then that to us is unconscionable and it is unjust.
Well,
Madam Speaker, the opposition takes no issue with what the minister has announced. We would urge the government to deal with the anomalies that exist for civil servants who have been granted increases and where there are discrepancies in their salaries, to urgently address those anomalies so that everyone can benefit from the new compensation package. But we take no issue.
And that those persons are in need. Remember,
will the
we are talking about...
MPs be giving up the increase or foregoing the increase?
Those discussions are ongoing, and I want to put this point squarely on the table. If they do, it still does not mean that a teacher who is having difficulty sending our children to school and providing for them will be able to do so. They still need that matter addressed as to how they are compensated.
In the teaching profession, Madam Speaker, and I'll spend a little more time on this one, for principals of tertiary colleges, salaries were $4.3 million to $4.9 million, and those have moved to $10.4 million to $13 million, Madam Speaker, for 2023. The salaries for principals of the larger secondary schools used to be $2.9 million to $3.4 million, and those salaries are now $8.5 million to $10.9 million, Madam Speaker. The salary scale for principals of the smallest secondary schools used to be $2.2 million to $2.6 million in April as at April 2021. Those as at April 2023 are now $5.6 to $7.2 million. So 2.2 to 2.6 moved to 5.6 to 7.2. Madam Speaker, the salary scale for secondary school vice principals has moved from $2.1 million to $2.4 million as at April 1st, 2021, and I will provide all this information. I don't want to circulate it now because it will just distract a little bit. But I think members of this House need to be armed with all of this information. Okay? From vice principals from 2.1 to 2.4 million to 4.6 million to 5.8 million dollars as at April 2023. For the large, and it doesn't stop at the secondary schools, for the largest primary schools, salaries have moved from 2.4 million to 2.6 million as at April 1st, 2021 to 7 million to 8.9 million as at April 1st, 2023. Madam Speaker, salary scales for principals at the smallest primary schools, which used to be 1.7 million to 2 million as at April 1st, 2021, are now 5.6 million to 7.2 million as at April 2023. For the Master Teacher 1, salaries used to be 1.6 to 1.86 million, and now, Madam Speaker, as at 2021, and now as at 2023, they are 4 million to $5.1 million at April 2023.
The government has reached a pivotal agreement with unions representing public sector workers on issues relating to overtime and other key conditions of service. The agreement is expected to have a substantial impact on the working conditions of the thousands of public sector employees. Raheem White filed this report.
The announcement came from the Minister of Finance and Public Service, Dr. Nigel Clark, during the Jamaica Civil Service Association's 105th General Meeting held at the Justiceira Park in St. Andrew. The agreement is a part of the government's comprehensive review of public sector compensation, which aims to improve the overall framework for public sector employees.
In that regard, we have to make sure that we pay attention to the conditions of work and to the compensation arrangements of persons who work in the public service. One hand can't clap. Hear, hear? And we have been through a period where we have made some of the most momentous changes in public service conditions of work and compensation that have ever been made in Jamaica's history.
The negotiation addressed several key issues, including extra hours worked, passenger mile and mileage rates, salary increments, and uniform allowances. Under the new agreement, there will be a standardized policy for handling extra hours worked, ensuring consistency and fairness across the public sector. The education sector saw the most substantial change, with many individuals now moving to permanent roles. Additionally, numerous members from various sectors, including civilian employees and those from waste management, have successfully transitioned to permanent employment. This highlights the government's effort to provide more stable opportunities within the public sector.
We're very proud of the fact that we are finally, after decades, transitioning contract workers who in every other sense have permanent employment, but who have short-term contracts that renew. We're transitioning them to permanent employment. Hear, hear. This is a problem that has been in Jamaica for decades, for 3 or 4 decades. We never start the problem. But we, as responsible stewards, are going to solve the problem.
Raheem White, CVM News.
You're a member of the Electoral Commission, correct? Yes. Representing the opposition. I understand commission members are paid at the level of a judge, so your own salary will be moving from about 9 million to 20 million. You're giving that up?
I'm prepared to. I went to school to study medicine.
You see, the thing is, though, I pay a lot of attention to words. Well, so I am prepared to. It's not the same thing as I am going to.
Well, we're discussing the matter, and if that is the decision, I am prepared to and willing and ready to do so immediately.